What's up guys, BOTCG here, and I want to profile my OMINAGRUZIO mask deck profile. That new card, Wolberis, really does put in work in the deck. It really gives us what we needed, which was more added card advantage, and like it stacks power. It's everything that the deck was missing baked into one card, minus a counter charger, but you can manage your counterblast in this deck, even though it is like kind of difficult at times. I'm not currently running a counter charger. I might in the future, but I found that playing the deck, I've been able to manage my counterblast quite heavy-handedly. But getting into the deck profile, Omni is like a really fake, it's a fake consistent deck in my opinion, because this is how many cards we need for the quote-unquote consistency to be even functional in my opinion. Because the ride line, the Great One ride line gets you Omni at grade 3s, quote-unquote gets you Omni at grade 3s, but it's only a top 5 search, and it doesn't search for Mask, which is weird. But the OG Omnia does search for OMINAGRUZIO or Mask, but again, it's only a top 5 search. And it's just really weird how like it kind of has baked in consistency, but you still need to run additional Mask searchers, because not only do you need OG, you need OG Omnia, you need OMINAGRUZIO Mask, and you need at least one Mask in rotation. Like, man, that's 3 cards right off the bat, bro. So it's like, again, it's like fake consistency, and it really does suck that we have to run like these many cards to like help the consistency of our deck. But besides that, man, like, oh man, like this, I would recommend OMINAGRUZIO to a new player. It is not hard to play. It is a really fun strategy. It's a restanding Vanguard, man. Like, oh man, I don't even think it's expensive either. Like maybe like the most expensive card is the Mask Searcher, and then 2 copies of the Mask, which I think was like $9 last time I checked. But yeah, let's get on to the Mask engine of the deck. 4 copies of OMINAGRUZIO Mask, standard. You really do want to Persona Ride every turn with this deck, even if you are forced to go first. Ideally, you want to go second. Well, depending on what you're fighting against, you want to go second, because there's certain decks that, like, even though your strategy is go second, you still get Roppel stomped if you let them go first. 4 copies of Mask. You still ride up into Mask, but you do want to have Persona Ride as follow-up, just for the pressure, or the Vanguard pressure. 3 copies of OG. There are times where you can just chain, you ride OG, chain Mask, next turn ride OG, and then chain another Mask just to get the extra binds, but that's not always necessary. It really depends on the combination of your hand. 3 copies of Mask of Hydragum. We have a few different ways to search this guy out, so that's why we are running it at 3. And we do use the actual order effect in this deck, because we do have 8 targets in the deck that it can search out. 4 copies of Linlinka. Man, this is such a good card in this deck. Like, the fact that like it gives you extra binds and it helps you search for your rearguard pieces is really nice. And it's a 20k beater by itself. You have 3 triggers in the bind zone. So Linlinka is a really good card in this deck. Obviously, it only works if you have a Mask Vanguard. And then 4 copies of Skullkemda. We still have to play the 4 copies of Skullkemda, even though we can search the Mask off of our grade 3. We can technically search the Mask off of 4 copies of Plutonic Prospector, but we still need 4, like, look at this, guys. Like, look at how much I have to buffer the actual consistency of this deck. Like, it's crazy. Like, I'm not saying that you still want to run Plutonic Prospector, but you can't run, in my opinion, I will not take the risk of just running Plutonic Prospector, in my opinion, just because it's not a guaranteed search. Skullkemda is a guaranteed search for the Mask. But man, like, oh, like, these are really good in like cohesion all together, but like, man, it really does feel bad when like you don't, like, you whiff your top 5s, or like you even whiff your top 7, which has happened to me in a game. So like just having the guarantee of a Skullkemda is really nice, and it also gives you a marker as well, which also helps buff your rear guards. I have been theorizing putting the marker behind the Vanguard Vanguard booster. I haven't tested tested it too much just because usually my Vanguard column is the weakest column, or it's like it's the hardest to make really strong in my opinion. But moving on to the rest of the deck, 4 copies of Misery Wing Dragon. Man, like this guy, oh man, your big beater of the deck. He gets a 5k buff for every different trigger you have in the bind zone. He's sold if you have 2 different triggers in the bind zone, he gets you draw a card on place. Oh man, like ooh, and you this Soul Blast, Whiteout Wilbarus Soul Blast, and you still have like a ton of soul in this deck. Like old Omnia Soul Blast, and I've never felt like, man, like I'm running out of soul. I always felt like I had more soul than I can get rid of, or I had just enough soul. But finally, going on into the new card, 4 copies of Whiteout Wilbarus. When I say this does everything that this deck wants, this does everything that this deck wants. Let me go into Wilbarus. It has a soul effect that when you ride a Grade 3 or greater Vanguard of OMINAGRUZIO in its card name during your ride phase, if you do not have a rearguard with the same card name as this Soul Blast, 1 card other than this card and call this to rearguard. And then its secondary effect on rearguard is when it's sucked up by your Grade 3 OMINAGRUZIO's Vanguard effect, you could choose one of your units, give it 5k power, which it was struggling in the power department. That's why we needed the Persona ride. That's why we need these beaters. It was struggling in the power department. Not only that, you can Energy Blast 3 and draw a card, bro. We have finally found a way to use all of our energy, man. That was the sucky thing with the other Grade 2, because it was so hard to keep because there was just better cards in the deck than that Grade 2. More often than not, I ended up pitching it and then just EBing 7 to draw the card anyway. This gives us a really cohesive way to use all of our resources. We're using our soul, we're using our counterblast, we're using our energy. Like, that's what I felt like the deck was missing, man. And just with 1 card, we really got it. Do I want this deck to get more support in the future? I do. Maybe we get another Grade 3 that moves away from the mask so that we can actually play like Omnia's legitimate support cards. That would be cool. I don't know what it could do though, to be honest, but I really like the trigger debuff effect on OMINAGRUZIO. Like the trigger debuff, that's why I would recommend it to a new player. Like the trigger debuff effect is really nice, especially when your opponent damages triggers and they just don't get the damage trigger. It's like you got additional power for free, man. But going on to the rest of the deck here, playing 3 DPGs, 1 Elementaria, nothing much to say here. The triggers was also a very important piece of this deck. I am personally running Rainbow. No matter how you slice it, I'll always recommend to run Rainbow triggers in this deck, just because Misery Wing gets buffed for each different trigger that you have, and Misery Wing is a key player in your deck. And also, you never know what your opponent's running, so running Rainbow just allows you to check box like no matter what you're playing against. But 1 Dark States Overtrigger. It's a restanding Vanguard deck. The Dark States Overtrigger makes sense. There's really nothing much to say there. 3 effect draws. We're just mainly playing this again for the name. I had thought about cutting the effect draws, but like I like the ratio that I'm running of all my triggers because it gives me a good chance to see them. Like, man, like, it is really easy just not to see certain triggers, or like more often than not, I was missing a trigger that I needed and then I drew it and then I ended up having to call something on top to get rid of the card out of my hand. So it's really easy not to see the key trigger that you need. You are pulling 1 guaranteed out of the deck from your ride line, so that's something at least. More often than not, if I haven't seen one already, I'll get a critical trigger, just because I know for a fact that crits are what people are running at 7 to 8 copies in most of their decks. And then once I get the crit trigger, my next trigger I want to bind is either a heal trigger or the front trigger, because more often than not in this format I found people are playing fronts over draws. But moving on, I'm playing 4 shield fronts. We don't need the into soul fronts. This deck has no problems with soul whatsoever, so just having the extra shield feels very nice in this deck. And then 4 into soul crits. I haven't really used the into soul ability. More often than not, again, I'm pulling out this crit off of my ride line if I haven't already seen one. But it's one of those. It's nice to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it, I guess. And then 4 copies of just regular heal triggers. I will die on the hill of, like, unless we're in a legitimate metagame, whereas, like, you can technically, like, if you're playing at more than the local scene, you can technically say, like, Bat and Bov are that metagame where you do want to play the effect heals, but you just get uber punished if you're fighting against anything that just doesn't care about those at all. So I've just found that regular heals have never lost me a game. Effect heals have. I know it's been, like, it's in the past. It's in the past, I keep telling myself. But man, like, I can't get over that it has lost me games. And then, like, just having a regular heal in hand hasn't lost me games. Like, in my opinion, of course. This is all opinionated speculation. I've always felt triggers are personal. But this is the end of the deck profile, guys. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. There are going to be more deck profiles in the future. I'm super biased, of course. I am leaning more towards the Dark States decks. This set, Dark States is my favorite nation. Sorry, not sorry. Maybe there are some other cool decks in other nations that are in this set. So maybe eventually I'll get to them. But I'm just like, I'm a kid in the candy store with my Dark States decks right now, guys. So, again, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Later.